Good evening, hello and welcome. You're watching Viewpoint. I'm Anusha Sonia. Top focus this hour is a piece of breaking news coming in. You'd remember the political stalemate that has panned out in the state of Maharashtra, especially the vertical split that we have seen in the NCP. And Sharad Pawar has a meeting with Rahul Gandhi right now. Rahul Gandhi has met Sharad Pawar. The visuals on your screen right now amidst the political huddle in which Mr. Sharad Pawar has found himself. I want to cut across quickly to my colleague Siddhant for some perspective on the story. Siddhant, what more details?
Yes, that's right. So a short while back, Sharad Pawar was addressing a press conference at his official residence in New Delhi. And behind me, you could see that meeting between Rahul Gandhi and Sharad Pawar is going on right now. The time Sharad Pawar concluded that press conference, we saw the convoy of Rahul Gandhi entering Sharad Pawar's residence. So perhaps it was kind of a surprise for people from journalist fraternity present here to cover Sharad Pawar's press conference. Very unexpected. Nobody expected this to happen. But then again, the idea of calling National Executive in New Delhi was to give a message to the opposition party also, because Mr. Pawar has been projecting himself as somebody instrumental in getting opposition parties together, and that was an idea to hold
Siddhant,
National Executive here.
Is that meeting over, or that meeting is still going on? What transpired in the meeting? Do we have any details?
Well, meeting is still going on, and as I was mentioning, it was also to do messaging for the opposition parties, because they should not doubt Sharad Pawar's intention, because he was somebody who was instrumental in bringing opposition parties together, and he still talks about opposition unity. So by expelling Ajit Pawar, Praful Patel, others, and also by taking action on other MLAs who have joined NDA, Sharad Pawar has given clear message to the opposition parties that he is very much on his side. And in fact, during the press conference also, the issues like Manipur was raised, and also that how, NCP will not tolerate anybody joining hands with communal forces. So that was also commentary which was made during the press conference.
All right, my colleague Siddhant getting us all the details of that important story. Yes, the fallout in the NCP has direct bearing on the opposition unity, and hence that meeting of Rahul Gandhi with Mr. Sharad Pawar. Let's now talk about the big story that we talk on Viewpoint tonight. The Uniform Civil Code that continues to be vigorously debated as the Law Commission has sought views from different stakeholders across the country. All India Muslim Personal Law Board has fiercely opposed any kind of intervention into the Sharia law. There's a special group of ministers that have been formed by the government, comprising top 4 ministers of the centre. The move by the government is clearly indicative of the serious intent to make Uniform Civil Code a reality. The criticism are aplenty. The opposition parties have criticized the government for lack of substantial proposal on the table for wider consultation. Amidst all of this, there are voices that have equated the idea of a uniform civil code with the imposition, and I'm quoting, of the majoritarian rule. Nothing can be further from reality. On this edition of Viewpoint, we talk about the challenges to the implementation of the UCC, and does this idea really tantamount to the imposition of the so-called majority rule? Our focus on Viewpoint tonight.
यूनिफॉर्म सिविल कोड के नाम पर ऐसे लोगों को भड़काने का काम हो रहा है, फिर ऐसी दोहरी व्यवस्था से देश कैसे चल पाएगा?
मुल्क में किसी भी किस्म का कोई भी यूसीसी की न पहले ज़रूरत थी और न आज है.
அந்த பொது சிவில் சட்டம் என்பது நாட்டிலே ஏற்கனவே सिविल सट्टम क्रिमिनल सट्टम एंड सट्टम இருக்கிறது.
मैजॉरिटेरियनिज्म का दौर इस मुल्क में चलाने की कोशिश की जा रही है. शक तो होता ही है कि इनके इरादे सही नहीं है.
There are some facts and there are some myths. Each time we talk about a uniform civil code, you will encounter both of them. Here is our attempt to list out few stereotypes that you will hear about the Uniform Civil Code but are not true. Many people will have you believe that the Uniform Civil Code will impact how you pray, eat or dress. Well, that's a myth. No law can prescribe a religious dress code, food habits or any kind of customs and their imposition on any community or religion in this country. That is guarded by the Indian Constitution. It is a facet of right to privacy, and nobody after the Supreme Court judgment can take it away. Let's come to the second one. Many argue that UCC will adversely affect the cultural diversity in this country. Well, the cultural diversity, the religious diversity within the Hindu religion has existed despite the rationalization of personal laws. Uniform Civil Code cannot regulate language, festivals, customs or traditions that is outside the purview of any law or statutory framework that may come if UCC becomes a reality. The third and the most important one. You heard about the majoritarian rule. Earlier you heard about these voices saying that now Hindu law will be imposed on other communities. There is no Hindu law in this country. Yes, there is a Hindu Marriage Act and certain set of statutes under the Hindu Code Bill, but they've been rationalized. The law very clearly states that that law applies only to Hindus, Buddhists, Sikhs, Jains, not to any other community in this country. The constitution of the country guards against any such imposition. UCC, many argue, will dislodge nikah, saat phere or a church wedding, your customary weddings, like they have always happened in this country and across the world. Well, the fact of the matter is that ceremonies will continue to happen. Law can prescribe how they will be recognized. Like in UK, you can have a church wedding or saat phere, but you need to go and register that wedding for it to be legally tenable. That's all Uniform Civil Code might do. Many also argue that a secular country can't have a uniform civil code. I agree that there are a lot of impediments in the way in the implementation of a uniform civil code, various challenges that the diversity throws upon us, but most secular democracies have a common civil code. Other than India, there is no modern democratic nation that has a parallel verse of personal laws like India has. So clearly, secularism, democracy and a uniform civil code has been together as an idea in many other democracies. It can be so in India as well. Let's take this question to our panel of guests as well who are joining us on the broadcast. I want to quickly introduce all our guests who are joining us on the broadcast. We have Mr. Sanjay Ghosh, who's a senior advocate at the Supreme Court of India, Rashmi Sawant, who's a Hindu rights activist, Zakia Soman, a women's rights activist, somebody who's worked in the field of Muslim women rights for a very long time, Sumit Chandar, who's an advocate, and Saira Shah Halim, a social activist, joining us on the broadcast. Good evening to all of you. Thank you so much for joining us on the broadcast. Mr. Ghosh, coming to you first and taking in a view from you, the idea of a uniform civil code. You've worked on many of such matters, and I want to take in your view. How can anybody be opposed to the idea of a uniform civil code? And if anyone is, aren't they opposing the idea of gender parity or equality?
I don't think anyone can be against a uniform civil code. The Constitution and Article 44 says that that is the ideal directive principle we are working towards. Issue is what is being put on the table. It's like saying, are you opposed to a good lunch? No, no one will say I'm opposed to a good meal, but what is the meal you're putting on the table? That's the issue.
You're saying who can oppose a good lunch? Nobody can. I want to specifically talk to you about the Muslim personal law. The Muslim personal law, and there are various facets of the Muslim personal law that have been spoken of, Mr. Ghosh. Say issues concerning about child marriage, polygamy and various other issues. No other personal law has been immune to the response and reform as the Muslim personal law. Many people argue. Do you agree with that criticism?
Well, I would say that there are troublesome aspects in every personal law. And you talked about custom, Anusha.
Yeah.
There is a custom in Tamil Nadu of tying the tali, the Mangal Sutra, and that is deemed to be marriage. And in many cases, the women are unable to prove that there was actually marriage because the tying of the tali could not be proved. So therefore, our laws have evolved organically. We had pristine laws and then some of them were codified. But because of the vast diversity of India, and there have been multiple customs everywhere, the legislature in its wisdom felt that we should also allow the customs free play. Now, today you want to codify them, fine. There have been abuses or there have been issues of customary law creating problem. But the issue is this is something which requires a wide societal consensus. It requires all stakeholders to be heard. It requires your proposal to be threadbare discussed and given effect to. So, for example, when they codified the labor laws, which is far less controversial, the government, the Ministry of Labour, put out their proposed codes on their websites and called for the stakeholders to go through it, give their suggestions, and that entire process went through. Ultimately, they even enacted those codes, but still now they have not been able to bring that into force. So, it is very easy to say we have to codify, but the proof of the pudding is in the eating. So let's see, what happens and when we have this result.
When we have that result, you rightly said that all personal laws have needed reform and need reform. I want to provocatively put that argument to you. Is Muslim personal law more problematic than other personal laws that we have in this country? That's one criticism that has been widely spoken of in the media.
Please reform the Muslim law. Please reform whatever you want to do. I'm not saying so. In our Rig Veda, it is said that let noble thoughts come from all directions. Under the Sharia, Anusha, you may be knowing that a woman cannot be disinherited by a will. So the Quran, the Sharia says that this is the share of a wife or a daughter, and by will you can only will 1/3 of it. The 2/3 you can't will away. So let us have that provision in the Hindus, for the Hindus also, that though in law you are giving the Hindu daughter equal share, but by will the father and the mother can completely disinherit her and give everything to the brother. So now you make a uniform civil code where you will say that that aspect of Shariat will apply to the Hindus also.
Yeah. My last question to you, we have other guests as well with us on the broadcast. My last question to you. Polygamy, child marriage are two of the most problematic aspects of the Muslim personal law, and they have consumed a huge amount of debate, when it's happening in the national sphere. Other than that, there are other problems like female genital mutilation, which many communities recognize as a customary practice, which is protected under the essential religious practice. All these social evils, I argue, must go, even when they are part of personal laws.
Absolutely. Polygamy is wrong. Polygamy should go. And in fact, the concern of the society, I don't know whether you know this, that though the law permits Muslims to legally have more than one wife, but the cases of more than multiple marriages, marriages which may not be legal, are more among the Hindu community. So the issue actually is not polygamy and banning polygamy, but how to protect the women of every community who are abandoned by their husbands. And if you see the legal system, what are the laws? We have so many laws for women as of now, but are we giving effect to this? Is the state funding enough resources, enough protection officers under the Dowry Prohibition Act and the Prevention of Commission of Domestic Violence laws? The state has these laws already. So fine, in principle, I agree with you. Of course, no one should say that polygamy is right. No one should. In fact, if you strictly enforce monogamy, you will find that there will be surprising results. Ultimately, protect the women, whether they are from the majority community or the minority community, who are abandoned by their husbands and who have to go on this legal system for years on end, begging for maintenance.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Ghosh, for sharing your views with us and opening that debate for all of us. I want to cut across to Rashmi, who continues to be with us on the broadcast. She's a Hindu rights activist. Rashmi, there are various criticisms to the proposal of a uniform civil code that have been made. Mr. Sanjay Ghosh argued that despite thorough reform in the Hindu personal law, we still see a lot of abuses happening. And till the time we have a good system in place, we cannot reconcile with the reality of the UCC. How do you see all those arguments? Rashmi.
Well, Anusha, I definitely do agree that implementation is very necessary and that necessary resources need to be allocated to ensure that these laws are upheld by the end of the day. But I do feel that the laws themselves are not sufficient right now, and the Uniform Civil Code is the need of an hour. It remains to be seen what are included and what's not included within the draft. But I definitely do feel that the Uniform Civil Code will go a long way in ensuring that all people have equal rights, and it will especially benefit women, given that they've been at the receiving end of a lot many social evils that have been legitimized in society using laws like these, and wherein personal laws have come in with the whole explanation of customs, and they have disadvantaged women, specifically of certain minority religions, and that this Uniform Civil Code will give them an equal platform to flourish and have a good future. as equal citizens of this country.
No, Sumit Chandar, coming to you, there's an interesting point that Mr. Ghosh made. He said that, while Hindu women have got equal right to property now, in the last 2 decades, this entire movement was seen in the judiciary and in the legal world, and this reform was brought in through a will. A lot of women are denied those rights. The same cannot be done under the Muslim personal law. So will we have a uniform code that will govern the entire country as to what will happen in terms of inheritance, which forms a huge part of the debate right now? Under inheritance, you have problematic aspects like the tribal rights, the land rights, matriarchal societies, and much more. But when it comes to the two major religions in this country, Hindus and Muslims, and especially inheritance, can we really have a common civil code? Sumit.
See, it's very simple. Why are we trying to make it just to a specific religion of Hindu or Muslim kind of a fight? Uniform civil code, when it comes, is it even practical by virtue of the other provisions of the Constitution? Or Article 44, which provides for a UCC or a uniform civil code, is somewhere in contravention of Article 25 and 26, which talks about freedom to practice religion, freedom to manage religious affairs. So those are the things we need to look into. And it is also that same very constitution which provides certain articles, say Article 371A, which provides special for Nagaland, and 371G for Mizoram, which says that no parliamentary legislation will replace the customary law or religious system. So 2 states in our country, by virtue of this very constitution, is protected. And it clearly says that no parliamentary legislation.
But Sumit, I was reading up today on the autonomous regions and how various countries across the world have some geographical area where there are certain special indigenous rights which are protected. The same can be done in India as well.
So, but those things are to be seen, because if you are talking about civil code coming throughout the country, is it even practical? Say, for example, the smallest of the things, you've already taken the marriage and the succession. But also, when we talk about Hindu law, there is a Hindu undivided family, HUF, which many millions of people in our country are already having properties registered in those names. So when there is a property already existing in a name of an HUF, with the coming of the UCC, what happens to those properties?
Okay, so there are those aspects. I want to raise the moot point that I discussed in the beginning of the show. Saira, coming to you, there was a statement that was made today that this is the imposition of the morality of the majority on the minority. Do you really agree with that kind of oversimplification?
See, I think this is a grounds for facilitating a Hindu Rashtra. I'll be very clear, because here we need to understand that when, the Bharatiya Janata Party talks about nikah halala or talks about divorce, we need to understand that divorces across the spectrum, be it any religion, has come down. So they really cannot.
Can I make an interjection, Saira? I'm sorry, I'm making an interjection.
No.
All right, go ahead.
The way you allowed others,
yes,
it's
absolutely.
confusing my train of thought.
Yes, please go ahead.
So what I was saying is, there are thousands of divorce cases in India. However, the issue of nikah halala has been so blown out of proportion. So people get the perception that every Muslim man is out there to commit nikah halala, when the Sharia has clearly condemned and it has been banned under the Sharia. Now, secondly, I want to ask that, okay, you're talking about the Uniform Civil Code. You give us the agenda. You tell us the architecture, show us the draft of the Uniform Civil Code, or is the Bharatiya Janata Party thrust the ordinance upon the citizenry of India without taking the stakeholders into account? I mean, what is happening? It is very clear that it's nothing but election campaigning for 2024. The Bharatiya Janata Party doesn't have any issue of policy that it can boast about. It cannot talk about any achievements, but it has only a divisive agenda, and that is to polarize society to gain from the 2024 election.
Saira,
which is very unfortunate.
You made an argument. You made an opening argument.
If you have the draft ready, show it to the citizens of India.
You made an opening argument that UCC, Saira ji, you made an opening argument that UCC is about Hindu Rashtra. that tantamounts to saying that article.
Like it.
One
It
second.
looks like
Let me make my interjection, and I'll give you the time to respond. Are you really saying that Article 44 of the Indian Constitution prescribes that there should be a Hindu Rashtra in this country? And my second point, you say that there is nothing on table for us to agree to. Valid point. There is nothing substantial on table. What is there on the table for you to say that this is the imposition of the majority rule?
See, if you've seen, ever since the Bharatiya Janata Party came into power, it has forgotten that it is a political party of the people of India, which comprises of all sections of society. It is only catering to a majoritarian, worldview, which is very sad, because we need to understand it is still a secular democracy, and you need to work everybody. You need to work for everyone. You need to take all citizens together. So what is happening is, because here we have seen how divisive laws have been implemented simply to marginalize the minorities in the country, whether you talk about the NRC, CA, whether you talk about the farm laws, whether it is abrogation of 370, anything. It is to further marginalize the minorities.
Farm laws were not about the minorities. They were about the entire farming community and the farmers of this country. Zakia ji, I want you to come into the discussion, and I focus on that point because I believe minority communities or stakeholders from the minority community can have a problem with the Uniform Civil Code, and in a secular modern democracy they have a right to put those objections on table, like the All India Muslim Personal Law Board has done. But to go on to the extent of fear-mongering and argue this is about imposition of the majority rule, this is about Hindu law being imposed on us, or as Saira ji was arguing that it looks like a Hindu Rashtra or the agenda being forwarded, this completely distorts the debate which should have been about the reform of personal laws in this country. Zakia ji.
So that is the nature of our society, Anusha. We continue to be a patriarchal society. Even reform in Hindu laws, the codified Hindu laws, were opposed. But then Nehru and his cabinet proceeded with the reforms. And that's how, to a large extent, Hindu women are able to enjoy some of the rights in marriage and in family today. A similar reform could not happen in the Muslim family law. Of course, I understand that this is part of the politics of the Bharatiya Janata Party. UCC is part of their manifesto. And I also feel that the government, those in government have greater responsibility to build a climate of trust and confidence, because there is a lot which has gone wrong. But that does not take away from the fact that Muslim women, citizens of India, have been legally discriminated against for the longest time, and this anomaly needs to be corrected. So there is incidence of child marriages in our country. There is incidence of polygamy. There is incidence of denying Quranic rights, such as consent, such as meher, such as share in property and inheritance, mothers' rights pertaining to guardianship and custody of children. So not even the Quranic affirmative rights have been given the backing of law. We are just told that we are ruled by the Shariat. But where is the written down Shariat? Why are we not following the example of so many Muslim countries such as Tunisia, Morocco, such as Indonesia, Malaysia, where there are progressive and gender just laws? We have not even borrowed from them. And we have not benefited out of a secular democratic framework which is there in our country. The parliament has also failed in its responsibility, by not codifying Muslim family laws. So this anomaly exists. And on the one side, there is the politics of BJP. On the other side, there is resistance by the Muslim conservative clergy. This gives the perception as though UCC is all about Muslims, as though it was rightly said by the panelists, that it is about all Indians. And it's going to impact all Indians, cutting across faith backgrounds, ethnicity backgrounds, and diversity backgrounds.
Absolutely. Moving forward, Sumit, Muslim women have been legally discriminated against. Even the rights which are protected under the Shariat are not granted to Muslim women, and this talk of reform has somewhere been subjugated by the political noise that we hear around this entire issue. Sumit ji.
Are we referring, or to some extent when we go to the court cases, of course the most prominent one in such matter was the Shah Banu case,
yeah.
where maintenance was given by the court despite the local laws there. But we must understand, when we are coming to create an entire uniform civil code under the constitution, we have to keep in mind that we are a country of diverse culture, religion, and custom. We cannot simply impose something without taking into consideration various aspects. And not only about Muslim or a particular religion. There are several tribes, like you rightly mentioned, where, again, the constitution provides under Article 29 that minorities can conserve their own culture. So we are going beyond that also. And there are not only polygamy that is being talked about, there are polyandry practices that is happening.
That's a very small. You're right. They're happening in matrilineal societies, especially in the Northeast.
I'll give you the statistics. According to the National Family Health Survey, 1.6% of the tribal people exist till today who are in the practice of polyandry. So, like the Todas tribe or the Jhansuri tribe in Uttarakhand. So there are, in various states have this, and everything needs to be taken into consideration. We cannot restrict ourselves to a particular minority, religion factor or not.
Rashmi, coming to you, when it comes to this entire criticism that there is no substantial proposal on the table, and perhaps all of us are missing one crucial aspect, which I believe most experts have pointed out, that yes, this is about the Muslim personal law, but the facets of all laws, including Hindus, tribals, all communities in this country are going to be touched upon. Even the Goan civil code that exists right now, there are various problems under that civil code. And if there is a UCC which is brought in, even that will be affected.
Well, Anusha, I think all these arguments are on one part of the, table. But then, when you wake up to news like a 15-year-old girl's marriage being legalized by the Delhi High Court, which happened very recently, only last year, it shakes you to the core. I think the atrocities outweigh the arguments on the other side, and that the side of the UCC is much heavier. The argument is much more sound to have something that will stop these atrocities against women and ensure that women are given equal justice and have equal dignity in our society.
Is this really about about the imposition of the majority mindset on the minority, or the idea of a Hindu Rashtra like some panelists have been talking about? Rashmi?
Anusha, we need to recognize that in India, Hindus might be the largest population, but then Muslims are the second largest population in this country. They're not a micro minority. So we need to stop this whole argument about majoritarianism and minoritarianism, because that does not apply here unless you're making a narrative out of it. If you look at the facts on the table, any argument can have two sides. But the argument which supports the UCC, it far outweighs the arguments on the other side. And most arguments I'm seeing against the UCC are nothing but narratives. Because if someone's going to come down and say it's about Hindu Rashtra, then they're just trying to build narrative about this, because there's nothing to say that any of these laws are in any way going to affect that. These are a completely different, these are addressing completely different aspects of our society. And it brings justice to that set of people who have been facing atrocities.
Sarah, is it not worrying? While I agree, and I have reiterated through this debate and many other debates that I've had in the last 2 weeks, that Uniform Civil Code is an intricate, complex idea, but it's a needed reform in this country. We must take one step forward. When a marriage of a 15-year-old girl is said to be legal under the Shariat practice and something that the court cannot take action against because personal laws are protected in this country, I'm sure it worries you as a reasonable, well-educated, well-traveled woman.
See, I will say one thing, that even though Islam has room for polygamy, you show me the number of cases and show me how much is the prevalence in society. Because here, when we go, when we go by social evils like polygamy, we have seen it happening in the tribal areas and the poorest uneducated households. And this is cut across different societies and religion. My contention is, if the draft is ready, talk about it. Because here we are taking sides. We are simply arguing for and against without even having the draft ready.
So if I put
I think here it's too early.
I agree
and
with
I
you.
think it's more of beating of drums. I think it is beating of drums before the 2024 general elections to polarize society. If Mr. Narendra Modi and the BJP have a draft ready, Please show it to the citizenry of India. That is all I'm asking, because here nikah
Sarah, isn't part of building consensus? Isn't the entire process of building consensus is about having the debates like we're having, or having open discussions about the idea of a uniform civil code, or having different point of view on a similar platform like here, and having an intelligent debate and discussion? This is part of building a consensus in this country. It's not going to be a sweet talk. All of us will have to put our problems and objections on the table and work towards it. I put this suggestion across that when it comes to child marriage and polygamy, irrespective of the communities or the tribes that we are operating in, there should be a national law on this issue, and it should be outlawed. It does not matter what the proportion is. It does not matter how many people still commit it. There should be a legal constitutional position in this country that polygamy should be outlawed. Is that something acceptable to you, Saira, in your understanding?
So I'm saying the UCC is desired as the founders of our constitution, the makers of the Constituent Assembly. That is the reason it is in the directive principles of state policy. However, they've said that it is not mandatory. It is desired. And here, whether you talk about anybody
Sarah,
who is
should we have a law against polygamy?
Of the
should
country,
we have a law against polygamy?
Mr. Amartya Sen, even Mr. Amartya Sen, that it is nothing but the draft for a Hindu Rashtra. So definitely we need to understand if you are implementing, if the Bharatiya Janata Party is implementing a new law, the citizenry has every right to ask what is going to be done away with. Will zakat be done away with?
Sumit,
will nikah be done away with?
I don't think. I said that in the beginning of the debate. These are all myths. These are all myths. Come on, UK and US have a common civil code. Have people stopped conducting Christian marriages or Hindu marriages in that country, or nikah doesn't happen there? A civil code does not operate like that. Sumit, please make a quick point, and I then want to take last words from Ms. Zakia Soman as well.
We are harping upon polygamy time and again.
Yeah.
Yes. Already the Indian Penal Code, Section 494, makes polygamy an offense in our country.
Yeah, but not to all communities.
What we need is the enforceability and practical implementation of the laws in existence. So let's not confuse.
No, but polygamy is not an offense under Muslim personal law. It is not an offense in various other tribes and communities which are protected under the 6th schedule and various other provisions of the Indian Constitution. Zakia ji, as I close this debate, I want to close it on a constructive note with you, and I want you to talk about it. Codification of a Muslim personal law is one aspect which has not been spoken of. Before the UCC, many legal experts argue that you need to be able to codify the Muslim personal law like you did in the case of Hindu personal law, and then begin the process of rationalization and some degree of uniformity that you can bring in. Do you agree with that suggestion?
That would be the ideal scenario, Anusha. And we have been calling for codification of Muslim family laws for the last 20 years, based on the Quranic injunctions and in consonance with the constitutional values of justice and equality. So good. At least this announcement of UCC on the part of the BJP and the Prime Minister has led to some Muslim scholars now talking about codification. Earlier, when we were demanding codification, they never felt the need to respond to that. So that positive development has happened. I feel gender justice and equality should be at the heart of this debate.
Okay.
Diversity should be upheld at all costs, but not at the cost of allowing misogynist and discriminatory practices for all genders, across all faith backgrounds, all ethnicities, all castes. So we need a better gender-friendly India, legally speaking and socially speaking, and the responsibility is on the government as well as on the society to work together.
Any personal law that violates the right to equality or the fundamental rights that I have as a citizen or a woman in this country, that needs to go. With that thought, I end this debate. Thank you all for joining us on the broadcast and being a part of the panel this evening. Well, we are slipping into a very short break. Up next on the other side, a proposal for VVIP lanes from the Congress party in the state of Karnataka sparks a mega controversy, angering both the BJP and the citizenry. Amid the infrastructure woes plaguing the state, is this the power trip proposal from the party which came into power on the promise of citizen welfare? Much on the other side.